Hey everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Happy Tuesday night. Had some parts come in for the 350 project here, so I figured we'd make a little more progress this evening. I've got dinner cooking, so when I think it's ready, I'm out. But I think we got some time to get some stuff accomplished. Quick recap, we tore it down last time. Determined sprocket and clutch needed replaced. Crank seals are going to get replaced. This is the one that's installed backwards. Go back to that first video and you'll see my amazement at discovering that. That's a new one. I haven't seen that before. But anyway, that'll be the first step, is getting these crank seals replaced. There's a couple trains of thought. There are guys who have had really good luck with drilling. Well, I'll use a new seal for an example here. I'm not going to drill it, obviously, but what some guys will do is they will take a miniature drill bit and drill into the steel cage out here, put a screw, like a drywall screw into it, and then vice grips to pull it out. I haven't used that method. A lot of these lips are so small that the screw couldn't be very big. I typically go the dangerous route, if you want to call it that, and I just find an angle that I know I can work with, and I take one of my baby screwdrivers and make sure I'm aimed away from the crankshaft. I'm going to tap in, get under the seal itself and into the steel cage, and start kind of popping it out. Of course, this will probably be the one, since we're on video, that really gives me fits, but you just kind of end up deforming part of the cage around there until you can get a slightly bigger screwdriver in there. We almost got it. And sometimes you have to do this on multiple sides. There we go. Now that all sounded a lot worse than it was. There's nothing wrong with either the crankshaft or the surrounding housing after that, but you can see that seal came out all jacked up. That's what I needed. You guys probably can't see it, but the lip that's supposed to seal in there is worn down pretty flat. The new ones have a nice ridge to them. So ideally, what you're going to do is have a piece of pipe or something, a long socket that'll fit over your crankshaft to drive this down flat. Now, I don't always have that. I put a little just regular, I put 30 weight motor oil in my oil can, so I'm just coating the seal with a little bit of that. Slip it down into place. And you need a socket. See, that's my spark plug socket, so that ain't going to work. You need one that's deep enough that it'll go over the crankshaft, but not so big in diameter that it goes too far past the edge of the seal. That, I think, started. You want to tap from side to side so that you don't distort the seal. And once it starts, I like to use just one of my bigger drift pin tools and work my way around, because there's always going to be one side that goes in before the other. I don't care what you do. And with this tool, it's got a wide enough lip or end on it that I can tap the seal down and see the tool hit the crankcase, and that's when I know when it's the same on all the way around. It's seated well enough. So one down. Super simple. We didn't have to split this crankcase. Clutch side's even easier because, I mean, it's sitting right there. We're just going to push past the seal with any luck. Avoid getting any garbage in here. This one might actually be more difficult because it is upside down. I'm going to get that old garter spring the hell out of the way. And this seal actually rides on the oil pump drive gear. And so it's a bit deeper seal in terms of how the depth into the engine than the other side is. Yeah, this is actually going to be a pain in the butt having this in upside down. Wow. Was not hoping for that result. So far we're just tearing up the seal. I'm not getting a good angle to catch the edge of the steel cage. So perhaps you guys will be the first to see me try out the drill bit method, because I'm getting nowhere here. God, I really wish this hadn't been installed that way. I don't like the thought of blindly drilling down there, not knowing I won't be able to see where the heck it's at. I'm trying to nick the edge of this seal and bend it down. And it's not working for beans. Wow. Alright, well, what do we got to lose, right? And we'll use my 1/16 bit. Hopefully it won't break it. These little baby bits just don't seem to last long around here. And I can already see one problem with this. Being upside down, that's not going to cut it. Because I can't get an angle where I won't be drilling into that oil pump drive gear. And that sleeve is one that we don't want to mar up. So, I may have spoke too soon. We may be forced to disassemble this whole engine simply because somebody did something silly. But we just got lucky. Whew. Alright. And this was... Wow, that's why it came out so rough. Somebody actually put some sort of a sealer, a gasket maker on the back side of this damn thing. That's interesting. And that is some tough stuff. But it's not on the drive gear for the oil pump, so we'll just leave it. That's not even the right seal. Same diameter, but different depth. They use the same on the flywheel side as on this side, which you can do, but this is a double lip seal that's supposed to go in here, and that's, again, so that it seals up nice and tight. Now, in a case like this, they made special tools where you could, you know, kind of move the seal down over whatever it is you're slipping it on if it's not a tapered shaft. But we're just going to use the small dental pick here. We'll get it started and then finish that off. I can already tell it's crooked, but there she goes. Very good. you got to be careful. You can see I'm not hitting this thing hardly at all. You don't want to distort that cage, then your seal won't ride evenly on the shaft, and that's pretty critical to getting a good seal. Okay, I think I can live with that. It doesn't look too bad at all. Okay, super strong compression there. And a little residual water from cleanout. The pulse hose here. Now, I may have to, when we go to start this thing, I may have to get that plug out of there and clean it up. So it's important, you want to catch your details at the right time. This cylinder pulse hose needs to come off and be replaced before you bolt the intake manifold and the boot and all that on there. Now they put an insulative sleeve over this, and of course that piece of hose stayed on the nipple down here, so we're going to have to get it the hell out of there. But that sleeve is good because even the new Tygon hose is affected by heat. It can lose its elasticity and therefore its seal eventually. I did have one of these that I didn't put an insulating sleeve on one time, and after a couple of years the damn thing had lost its ability to fit tight on the barb here, and the pulse to the carburetor was interrupted, which of course is not good. Makes for a terrible running saw, if it runs at all. Now if you don't have, if that original, this just looks like spark plug material, the wire insulating material. If that's gone from your saw, you can just use the next size up piece of Tygon or something similar. Just something to give it a little more thickness. So I keep a chart out here because of the kits that I sell, the various hose kits. It makes it easy for me to put those together, and it also makes it easy when I'm doing one of these saws to get the right hose lengths and all of that without having to run into the computer all the time, which can be, of course, a pain in the neck. The other thing I'll do sometimes is I'll print the IPL and bring it out here if I have any questions. There's a piece I had laying around. Leave it a little long. We'll trim it at the end. That's the beauty of having those IPLs on the website. And again, you guys are all free to go there and download them for your own use. But they're watermarked so that they don't end up for sale on eBay. I know most people wouldn't do that, but there's a handful that would. So I have made it so that I will know that. And while I might laugh and thank you for the free advertising, I'll also ask you to knock it off. Anyway, we'll slip this sleeve down in place past the cylinder screw here, which is a little bit easier said than done. As are most things on the chainsaw. As are most things. What's up?
Do you want me to start the asparagus?
Yes. So on the menu tonight is pork chops and gravy, mashed potatoes, and steamed asparagus. So, no Taco Bell here tonight. Okay, that hose is in place. Again, I left it a little bit long. So, look through the pile of garbage. I've cleaned most of this stuff up already, with the exception of some of the fasteners. You'll note that I've got my bench grinder right over here with a wire wheel. That's great for cleaning up small fasteners and stuff. If you got a big wad of grease and oily sawdust, not so much, but for the small stuff, like just normal soiling on these screw heads, I'll take the old Loctite and all this junk off. I'll just wire wheel it and be good to go. So this package should have, I'm quit knocking stuff off the shelf here, this package ought to have some intake boots in it. And it does. Brand new intake boots. Gotta have them. So, that gasket looks good. I'm going to reuse it after I get the little bit of silicone off here. Whatever that stuff was that was used did not adhere at all. It wasn't adding anything in the way of sealing ability to this intake manifold, so, and I can't see any reason to use it. If the gasket wasn't available, or this one was bunged up and we couldn't get one, I would use the Moto Seal by Permatex. I've had great luck with that. It stands up to fuel very, very well. I haven't had a gasket fail yet on a fuel tank when I've used that stuff. So I shouldn't say gasket, I'll just use the straight up Moto Seal in the place of the gasket. On these guys, these intake manifolds, you want to set that down in place, and you got to get your heat shroud here, air shroud, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. There's a rubber grommet in here that the hose passes through. If yours is bad, my aftermarket 68046 grommet, perfect replacement right there. So you'll feed your pulse hose up through that and pull it down basically tight over the intake. And at this point, you're going to want to put your screws back in. And these are a little bit dirty, so we'll clean them up. If you're going to use that method of cleaning stuff up, I will caution you, make sure you have a great grip on it. Those can launch to places where you will never find them if you lose it. Off of those brushes. Alright, so I recommend you get everything started before tightening any one down all the way. These damn shrouds have a way of distorting and pulling your screw off to an odd side. So you want to get everything started. These are not big threads, so you do not want to do anything that's going to strip them out. Otherwise, your cylinder head has just become a pile of scrap metal. I don't know why the hell. I think I've got that backwards. That should be sitting flatter than that. I didn't think this was clocked like that. Most of the 350s and 360s that I work on are that later style intake that uses 4 of the same size screws here. Yep, that is definitely not slipping down. Alright. Yep. There is a clock position to it, so there's another lesson. Check before you start putting screws in. And if this little shroud is not flat, turn your intake around and get it right. Okay. Again, we'll get everything started and in place before we go crazy. Cleaning up one of these intake manifolds and the garter spring that holds the boot in place can be a little bit of work if you've had one that deteriorated the boot. I've found acetone works pretty good. Brake clean is so-so. Mineral spirits don't bother. Gasoline, good luck. You need a pretty decent solvent. Okay, those are tight. So the boot, that's what it's supposed to look like. And you'll see right down here, that's the ridge that your spring needs to sit in. Now this spring is kind of a pain in the neck, because you can't stretch it too much or you'll pull it out of shape. So you got to get it higher than this. I have found, I haven't had a lot of luck, but we'll try it again. We'll try setting it in the groove. And where's my small screwdriver? You want something that's not going to poke a hole in the boot if you slip. And you don't want to slip. So just go slow and start stretching it over the intake there. If you try and take too much at once, it'll pop the spring off of the boot and set the spring down, but not the boot itself, and then you've got nothing. I'll be damned. That was smoother than any of these I've ever done. Perfect. Hopefully, that's good for a little walk. Okay. So, we have taken care of the major parts that need to be dealt with on that. So let's throw the flywheel back on. I want to get some stuff on this saw. That cleaned up pretty well. I think those pawls could use just a smidge of lubricant here. Try not to make a mess. There we go. One trick I like to use, I didn't do it with the nut for some reason, but I like to put the washer and nut right on the magnet when I disassemble. That way, when I go to find them again, there's somewhere that makes some sense. And depending on which way your engine is sitting with the keyway, you may have to rotate it a little bit so the magnets aren't grabbing the coil there. One challenge to these chainsaws, especially if you get more than one apart on the bench at one time, is what in the world are you working with and where? I got a 410 in, oh geez, what was it, Saturday? Maybe it was yesterday, I can't remember. Obviously it's torn apart and the guts are back there. Good enough. A little power head going here, that's good. Alright. So I wanted to replace the oil line on the tank itself, so we might as well bring that in and check that out before going too much further here. The fuel hose itself had already been replaced, so I'm comfortable leaving that. And looking at these AV grommets, I think we're going to replace them. See, this one's all busted out. So yeah, we got some good stuff to do here. Alright, the oil hose, where it goes into the tank, is actually underneath your handle bracket. So you just want to pop those two screws. And when they come out that hard, that means they've never been out in the Loctite held. Okay. And that is still a mess. So there's a fitting that screws in right there. I'm going to clean this stuff off just a smidge. Much better. Yeah, that hose, those ends are so bowed out that it would not create a good seal on the barb on the crankcase, and it would end up sucking air, which is not good when it comes to oiling. One of the quirkiest 360s I ever worked on was actually for a guy here locally. And we fought that damn thing. I would get it oiling pretty well on the bench. And it wasn't the strongest oiler, but it was putting out oil, and I knew the pump was good. But he'd go out and run it, and it'd get warm. Wasn't putting out oil. His chain was getting coated with sawdust and goop and sap and whatever else. And pretty soon the bar would get hot. The sprocket nose was getting hot. Call me up and say, nope, still isn't going. I'd gone through it and gone through it. Finally, I took the thing apart again, and the later crankcases have a plastic fitting there, similar to the barb. Actually, it's actually the same as is on the late model carburetors, where you've got this steel insert and then the plastic cap that snaps over the top of it. Well, that damn plastic cap had cracked, and so it was sucking air. And once I replaced that barb, the thing oiled like a dream. What didn't go well, actually we want a little Loctite on those again. I'm going to use blue instead of the red. We don't need it to be seized in there forever. The sad part about that saw is after I got that all dealt with, he cut with it for maybe 3-4 months, and then the coil blew, and at that point he gave up and went down and bought a new saw. And sometimes that can be tempting, especially if you have one that you've been fighting with. You fix it, you run it a little bit, breaks again. You never know what these saws have been through in their lives. Who's had them, how they've treated them. Can be good, could be terrible. And I'm going to see, I don't think I've got any of those AV mounts up here. No, I don't. Let's dig into the parts bins here and get some of those. Even though these are designed so that they're captured in a sense that the way they fit in there, if these blow out, the pin is still in there and it can't go that far. I just don't want to deal with the thought of having a saw come apart. So yeah, look at how split out that one is. That is just utterly garbage. I like to take the time to scrape out the goopy remnants that's behind them, and there's always some. There's no point in subjecting new rubber to that. And some of these can really seize in place really well. That one wasn't too bad. But it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to replace one when you can replace all four and have rubber that's all going to feel the same and act the same. Okay. Installation's a breeze. Done. So these are considered a 4-point isolation system because they have 4 points of rubber contact. Some saws use springs, especially the lower cost ones. I honestly don't know if there's a huge difference. I can't tell. I can't tell a huge difference. But. Alright. Quick double check in my brain here. I don't think there's anything we're forgetting. So we'll hook this hose up, this oil hose. Okay. There is something I'm forgetting. But we're not so far along. We can't rectify it. You need your carburetor plate to be in place. And remember that this slips up through the bottom of this throttle handle. So you want to put the side with the part number down and have this side facing up. And there's an extra hole in the side here that you fish this pulse hose through. And that's going to be a very tight fit. It's interesting. Do an angle cut on the end of the hose, and that'll make it go in a little better. There we go. Those intakes, or these plates, were redesigned a couple times too, and in one of the redesigns I know they made that bigger. So this is kind of the same drill. You need to get the intake boot through this without punching a hole in it. I think I can do it without the screwdriver. I'm just kind of pushing on from underneath with my finger here. And what you want is for it to pop through and then start to seal to the plate. And this is a good point where you can put your adapter plate with the gasket in there. That's what the carburetor actually seals to. Get that so it's sitting fairly level. There we go. Doesn't look bad. Alright, now we can get back to this. So you start pulling it into place. The first thing you've got to do is make sure that the front indexes, that these two AV mounts actually slip into place. And sometimes they go in easily, other times less easily, and you've got to compress them with the screwdriver a little bit until you get that edge started. And that's what we're going to do here. Maybe. Oh, you are a cantankerous thing. Okay. Behave. I already went a little too far unintentionally. Let me take that back out because it is annoying me. Oh, I tore that gasket, so we'll have to replace it. You've got to make sure that this hose doesn't do what it did and blow out the back here. You need it to come up through the carburetor chamber. There's a little notch right in the side. You see where that hose is fitting through there real nicely. So when that is in place, then you can compress these top two and get them down in place. And at that point, you should be seeing your intake plate lining up nicely. Make sure I don't lose it here. See that lining up nicely, and in theory, your threads are going to be lining up down below. Now these are damn close. It's just maybe, there we go. If we can get a screw to start by hand, I think it'll pull into place. This is another thing you want to be careful not to get crazy with, because these threads can and will strip out. I've seen it more than once. I'm going to go ahead and secure that in place. Now the trick here is don't forget that that engine is still loose from this handle, and knock it around or you'll tear that new boot. So I'm going to clean these pins up real quick. The one that was missing will get a brand new pin. Now this is one spot I do like to use the Loctite red. Again, you just don't want these backing out, but you don't need to go crazy with this stuff either, guys. This is a huge tube because I go through a lot of it. But if you buy the little liquid one instead of the gel, you can really blast a lot out. That's all you need. Just a little smidge like that. Because if you got to take this apart again, you don't want to be tearing threads out of the magnesium. So what you want to do is make sure that you can see the hole that this pin is supposed to go into, and you'll feel it start to seat. And I'm not going to go with the rattle gun right away, because I want to feel that that's threading in properly, and it is. And I'll move to the other side. Notice I'm lifting by the engine more than I am anything else, because I don't want to put stress on that boot. Those boots are actually fairly durable if you do a couple of things. One, don't mess it up on installation. But more importantly, saws that sit deteriorate. So if you let it sit too long without running some good fuel and oil mixed through it, that's going to allow heat to dry that rubber out, and it'll start to deteriorate. Now it's better than it was back in the day, obviously, but we have a bigger enemy today than when these saws were built, and that's the ethanol that goes in the fuel. I think almost every state, well, I know every state has a mandate of a certain amount. Here in Oregon, we do 10%, and that is enough to completely wreck the fuel systems in these small engines. If you keep it fresh, you can usually get away with it, and by fresh I mean less than 2 months old, because the stuff draws water and it's just rough on the rubber. When you mix the alcohol in the water, it does very bad things to magnesium and even worse things to aluminum. Well, guess what your carburetor bodies are made out of? Aluminum. So, you can end up with one hell of a nice mess of corrosion. I know my friend Hal up in Grants Pass came across that in his one of his Super 2s, or maybe it was the XL2, it doesn't matter. It was one of the Walbro HDC carburetors, and he opened it up, got the metering diaphragm out of the way, and there was just this big ball of corrosion and nastiness right there on the circuit plate, which certainly explained why he was having tuning difficulties with it. Okay. Alright, my watch says we've been at this for half an hour. That means my dinner's about ready. So I'm going to go eat. Quick recap. We got both crank seals done. We got the flywheel back on. We got the new carburetor boot installed. Before we fire up next time, I'll find a new gasket for this plate, since that one so nicely broke for me. But with any luck, the clutch will have come in, so we can get that side all buttoned up. We'll go through, rebuild the carburetor, replace the starter rope, slap this back together. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a test run on the next one. But that's part 3 of working on the Homelite 350 SL.